So the East-West link has been proposed for many years, and one of its key potential stumbling points was the intersection with the Melbourne Zoo, one of the prime tourist attractions in Melbourne. I'd been covering the East-West link in a number of ways. We'd had an East-West link blog going where we'd covered every single day of the assessment committee hearings. And one of the things that was really curious was that the zoo didn't seem to be speaking out about this $1 billion or $10 billion road passing within 40 metres of its front door. And that seemed pretty strange to many of us who had been following the East-West link progression. One person in particular, one woman, had been filing lots of freedom of information requests to try and get a lot of information out of the zoo. And again, not much had been forthcoming. So I thought it was a good opportunity to front up with a camera to the CEO of the zoo, Jenny Gray, and to do that in a fairly non-confrontational way. There was a children's rally going on a rainy Sunday outside the zoo, and the campaigners had quite strategically gathered a whole lot of children together, dressed them in animal costumes, and they were congregating outside the zoo on this particular day. So I chose that day to put a camera to Jenny Gray and ask her some of these questions about why they weren't concerned about this huge freight route, essentially a freight route, running past the zoo with an exit within 40 metres of the zoo. It was a good test for me to go into reportage with an open mind. I probably had some fairly personal views about what I thought this situation, the negatives of this situation, but it was a good test to go in and be completely open-minded and put to the zoo questions about potential harm or disadvantages to the animals of this big East-West link. It was one of those situations, though, where I didn't have to work very hard in order to get some pretty good material to work with from my interviewee, where I put some fairly benign questions about, well, how are the animals going to cope with the construction? Have you done any testing? Are you worried about this construction, this big infrastructure project right outside a zoo that is running campaigns all the time on extinction of animals and conservation of animals? But my questions were fairly benign. The answers I got, however, gave me some pretty good material to work with. One of the answers in particular that I can remember very clearly was almost a throwaway line saying, well, if it does cause any harm to the zoo, we'll just move the animals, which seemed to me to be the very point, that if there was at all a concern about impact on the animals from this project, the zoo might want to be taking some kind of a harder line on that, which hadn't been visible in any of the media and public relations to that point. Having got those responses from the CEO, it was then just a matter of working out the other perspectives that also needed to be explored. And I spoke with someone at the University of Melbourne who'd been working for many years on impact of noise on animals, and she gave very detailed examples of the kind of noise that humans may not be sensitive to, but of course animals, with their different ways of communicating, can be sensitive to all sorts of rumbling and underground noises. So I had the expert, the CEO of the zoo, the campaigners and their children, all dressed up in fluffy animal costumes, which added a bit of a personal and entertaining element to it. Rod Quantock, the perennial campaigner Rod Quantock, coming out with his lines. And then it was important also to have a personal interest element to the story, so a mother with her children, and it was the same mother who had fired off all of the freedom of information requests, so she was well informed about the issue. And to add that, the reason that she'd fired off all those requests was because she was very concerned about the impact of the East-West link on the zoo that she takes her children to. So the story began with that element, this mother who was concerned, and moved through the campaigning element and the responses from the expert and from the CEO. And then they say don't work with animals and children. Well, I covered off both, and I've got to say that being able to photograph beautiful animals at the zoo and then work with those images to create a collage of what the zoo is for visitors was, well, I'll work with animals any day.